So, we're going to start this episode by just kind of acknowledging what the relationship of this topic is to the podcast, and that's the fact that a husband and father is dead at 31 years old at a stage in life that most of us are kind of in. 2 young kids, a wife. Agree with him or not, I think that celebrating it is evil, and so that's not what we're here to do today, but I think we all kind of could use a little bit of a therapy session after the last week of kind of processing this. I don't know about you guys, but I worked the whole week. I was watching social media way too much, and didn't really have a lot of time to process any of it, figure out how I thought about it. Delved way too much into social media, which I might talk about later because I have some opinions on social media as a result, but I think deleting that off my phone a few days ago has been a lot more helpful as I've had time to kind of reflect on the whole situation. And I know how this conversation would go not in front of a microphone. We all kind of agree on things politically, and like there's all these other details and things that we could discuss to the moon. But this podcast is more about actionable stuff and mindset stuff, I think. And so we're not going to talk about the politics of this. We're not going to go into all the conspiracies and details that I'm sure you guys are all well aware of. This is more to kind of hash out how we're feeling about it, relate it to fatherhood, and just kind of have a therapy session, because I think it helps when the microphone's in front of your mouth. You don't want to talk about the ridiculous stuff and all the politics and all that kind of stuff. For me, one of the most traumatic parts of this whole thing this last week was I made the mistake of watching the actual shooting video uncensored. And even as somebody who works in the ER, like, I don't see people get shot. I see them after they've been shot. So seeing the actual shooting was pretty traumatic and like hung over me for days on end. Like, you're not supposed to be seeing somebody's like final moments on this earth. So I think that's something that we really don't ever see, you know, especially on social media. That stuff gets censored, and I'm sure it's out there, but for me, this is kind of the first time I've really seen that on social media. So that's been hanging over me, something I've had to kind of process, and something I do not recommend viewing if you haven't viewed it. You know, I think that we can all agree with the basic premise that whoever killed Charlie killed him because of what he stood for. I think that's a pretty standard thing that we all kind of know, and that's kind of as far as I want to go into in the politics of it, to be honest. Yeah. I've been thinking a little bit about kind of my own opinions on things and like what I stand for as a man kind of in the wake of this, and like we're supposed to be Jesus's hands and feet to the world, and we're supposed to speak truth. And so I kind of asked myself, like, am I doing that enough in my own life? And the truth is I really don't. You know, I mean, do most people that know me know I'm a Christian? Probably, but is it come out that much? I don't know. So those are just kind of my initial thoughts, things that I'm reflecting on in the wake of this tragedy.
Yeah, I think kind of relating it to that, had a conversation with one of the guys that I know through work, and didn't really talk in detail about it, but he not really sure his take on it or his view on it or whatever, but something that stuck out to me was just that he was almost kind of like, yeah, he was just religious, and like that's what he correlated him with. And the way he said it kind of came across as derogatory. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, if I were to die today, what would they say about me? Yeah. And I think one of the clips that everybody's seen is kind of just the clip where Charlie, I mean, it has nothing to do with politics, but they ask him what he wants to be remembered for. He wants to be remembered for courage for his faith. And I think that's something that hit home with me, was just like, I got to quit caring what the world thinks. I got to quit caring. I got to care more about how I'm acting or how I'm treating others according to the word and according to God more than I do about people. And I think that's one thing that I take from this tragedy, just like that I can learn from, but I mean, it was weird. I mean, just the whole scenario, because I mean, I was working when you guys were all texting about it and everything, and I just remember, like, as soon as I read that, and just like, I just had this uneasy feeling in my soul, and which was weird, because I've never felt that way about someone that I didn't know. Yeah. But I think, kind of like you're saying, Aaron, like, similar stage in life, but also, like, he was unashamed of his Christianity. And I wasn't necessarily heartbroken for him, because, I mean, he has faith. He's confident in where he's going. We're confident in where he's going because of what we believe. But more just the wife and kids, man. Like, immediately went to Leondi and Lindy and Kyle, and I was just like, man, I can't even imagine. And I think that's part of the reason why it hit home for me, even though I didn't know him from Adam. Just knew, I've watched some of his stuff, but never obviously met him.
Yeah, David and I were talking about this before. Like, I don't think I ever sought out his material, but I watched just a ton of it. I mean, you know, once you watch a few conservative things, social media feeds it to you, and I'm, you know, I don't want to say the phrase whether I agree with him or not, because everyone's saying that right now, but the fact of the matter is he was a strong Christian that just spoke his beliefs, and he was really killed for that, you know.
Right.
He wasn't killed over his opinions on taxes,
right,
or even anything really that political. But yeah, I've kind of re-examined, like you were saying, like, am I being courageous in my beliefs most of the time? Am I ashamed of the gospel? Sometimes I probably am. Like, I probably don't speak up when I should, because of fear of ridicule and what people would say. And, like, how many times am I just being quiet when I should speak up and speak the truth?
Yeah.
And, you know, not be ashamed of the gospel.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I mean, I think the biggest thing for me and why it hits the way that it does, I mean, I feel like we haven't had a lot of people in the U.S. in our lifetime that, you know, that I would consider that have been martyred. And I feel like Charlie was a martyr. And I think that's why it hits differently for me, and everything that you guys said. It's like, but I do think that there's so much inspiration there, because the reality is that he was so rare and so unique, partially just because of his intelligence and how well read he was, and of course the platform that he spent so much time building and that type of thing, right? But the other part of what makes him so unique is just, like you said, he was unashamed. He spoke the truth. He stuck to what he believed. He was never afraid. And the reality is that shouldn't be that rare, right? Like, and I think that's why it's inspiring for me, because we should all be like that, you know. So
yeah, sorry, I didn't want to cut you off.
No.
Yeah, you know, we've all talked about it via text, and there was a heaviness to it that we've never felt.
Yeah.
And to Chris's point, like, we didn't know him. He didn't know us. You know, it's not somebody I ever texted. It's not somebody I ever said hello to. It's not somebody I ever said hi to in person. Why has this caused such a heaviness? And I was chatting with Kim about it a bit, and if you kind of think about what we've seen, and the, you know, now we're a few days past it, but we had a stretch, I think it was just a few days, and, you know, I remember opening up Instagram, and we saw that the young Ukrainian girl in North Carolina was stabbed, like on the subway or the train. I'm not sure which it was. And they just released the video, and I wasn't looking it out. I had never heard the story, but I saw her get stabbed in the neck and nobody do anything, and she slumps over and dies.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I was not expecting to see that when I opened Instagram. And then just a few days later, to your point, I was out for a walk. It was like my rest day on working out. So it was just like a walk to kind of stretch the legs and move my body. And had a pop-up on my phone, like, you know, hey, Charlie Kirk. And I got it from the Wall Street Journal. I got it from, you know, Time. Seeing it, like my Apple Watch news blew up with, hey, first of all, there's been a shooting. And then it turned into Charlie Kirk was shot. So I remember when I got home, I'd finished my walk. I didn't rush home to, you know, that's, again, not something I intended to see. And generally speaking, if you want something up to date, it's not Instagram, you go to X. So I just opened up X. Literally the first video that popped up was the video.
Mm-hmm.
Uncensored, uncut. Here's what happens. And again, it's just, I didn't ask for it. I mean, I asked for it by just generally wanting to know, but you don't expect that video to hit like that. And then within the same day, there was a shooting up north here in Colorado. And it was just the most intense, heavy burden of, and I'm going to call it what I feel like it is as a Christian, is demonic activity. Evil was just absolutely running crazy in those things. And our eyes aren't supposed to see that. You know, we want to call ourselves a civilized society where, you know, we're not crucifying people and we're not out watching it. And my eyes were not prepared for the things that I've seen in, we'll say, the last 5 to 7 days. And then when you throw on top of it, you know, keeping the politics aside, I also believe that he was killed for his faith and what he was saying. And for 40 years of my life, I grew up thinking, well, that's not going to happen in America. We don't live in a third world country. We're not Pakistan. You know, we're not China. We're not an underground church. Like, we consider ourselves a Christian nation. We poll as a Christian nation. So that's never a threat. And I think what has been sitting on me so heavily is, I'm not Charlie Kirk. I will never be Charlie Kirk. He was a one of one, but I think it got a little bit more real that door has now been cracked open, that violence, Christian or not, violence with somebody who has a differing opinion is now on the table. That has not settled well with my soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going off of what you guys have said, the heaviness is real. And I've seen it all over social media. I've seen it just texting you guys, talking with you guys, that none of us knew him. None of us met him. Like, I may have consumed the most of his content. Just from last year, he kind of gave me hope for the country. In a country that felt very lost and broken. Listening to him, he was very positive. He was optimistic. And so I had a lot of free time driving, and I just listened to his podcast every day. And so when I saw it, and I saw the video as well, because when I heard the news, I heard that Charlie Kirk was shot. And like Dan, I was like, to get most up-to-date info, you go to X. I wanted to see how bad it was. Like, was it just like in his arm? Like, is he going to be all right?
Was it a Trump situation? Did we just grab an ear?
Exactly. So, searched it out and immediately found the video and immediately knew that was not good. But the heaviness, just keep going back to that, because not only have you guys said it, but my algorithm is now set up for faith-filled content, and so many people in that are saying the exact same thing. I never met him. Why do I feel this way?
Yeah.
And I think it is because we're all part of the body of Christ, and we feel that a brother fell. And you feel that in your soul because it's a spiritual game.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're all tied together, as the Bible says. and it's rough. It's
Yeah.
rough. I looked up to Charlie because he embodied what I feel like a man should be. And you get to kind of sit back and say, oh, Charlie's got this. I don't have to do anything. He's got this. He's telling it like it is. I love
what
this.
he said.
Exactly.
Yeah,
what he
yeah.
said. Now it's like, Charlie's gone.
Yeah.
Like, we got to now
Step up.
step up and step up in your family, step up in your faith,
Yeah.
not be shy like we talked about. And it's easier said than done, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, to your point about hope, like, I think, because I mean, the content of his that I consumed was always his debates on college campuses. But, because I feel like when he first started, it was like, didn't he start in like 2014 or something like that? I don't know. But I feel like I feel like there's this timeline of like when I originally started watching his content, and it was like him surrounded by so many people that disagreed with him, to his more recent content where it'd be like he debating someone who didn't agree with him, surrounded by people that kind of agreed
Yeah.
with him.
Right.
So just going back to that hope perspective, it's like regardless of what you believe or how you feel about his perspective or whatever, the point is that if you're willing to have a discussion and you're willing to talk, a lot of people's minds and hearts are actually open. Like, I think that for me, I have this thought of like, if I share my faith, if I share my opinion, if I share my beliefs, it's not going to make a difference anyway.
Right.
And I think that I've been challenged with that because of Charlie and watching his debate, or even people saying like, yeah, you know what? I never thought of that. That's a really good point. And honestly, even since Charlie being gone now, like the conversations that have come up as a result of that, and people who maybe were against him or were strongly against his opinions or whatever, being able to kind of do a double take and reflect and be like, man, but you really have to respect what he stood for.
Mm-hmm.
So all that to say, it's like, I think there's more room for conversation than at least I gave myself credit for. And, part of our responsibility, to your point, Charlie, is like, stepping into that, into our own spheres of influence. And then like taking it back to our kids, like I didn't see it, but Kirsty was talking about, I think it was like his 3-year-old or something, who's asking his wife, where's daddy? When's daddy coming home? And man, that's like crazy, right? But then I also think about all the content that's there. Like that child both of his children will grow up knowing who his dad was, what their dad was about. And obviously they're going to be so proud to be his kids, right? And that's because of the example that he was and that he is.
Right. It's
because of the legacy that he lived and that he's left. And so bringing it back to family, like I think that's what Charlie always talked about, is the core family, the nucleus family, the nuclear family, and how important that is. And so for us, it's like we're still here. We still have an opportunity to do that. We still have an opportunity to put our family first, to put our kids first, to build our legacy, to be that example. And you just never know, when your time is up. And so it's like, we got to put in the work,
He did something that like not a lot of people do, and that's have like in-person conversations with people you disagree with. It's so easy to scroll social media and you like a video because you agree with that person, or you ignore the video of someone you don't disagree with. But social media, it's all the extreme voices for the most part, and it just polarizes you, and you immediately think everyone is either on this side or that side, when the truth is most people are reasonable. Most people are kind, like most people are good. And when you scroll social media, it's so easy to fall into the trap that everyone's evil, everyone's celebrating this, or the opposite, everyone's super pissed off about this. And it just sets us in these camps. There's this like mindfulness practice that you can do where you make the assumption, you just have the intention that everyone around you is good. I try to do this at work because like I'll get stuck on the social media trap and I'll see all these videos of patients complaining about their ER visits, and I just get indignant. I'm like, well, I can tell you exactly why it went this way and why they didn't make your super rare diagnosis in the ER. And I was getting pissed off just watching this, but it helps to realize these are the extreme voices. These are not the majority of patients that I see. And if I have this intention that everyone is good, I have great interactions with patients when I realize we're all human. We're not these extreme sides. And most of our country's not on an extreme side. When you walk out in public, like, I don't know how you guys have been feeling about people when you walk around in public, but, you know, after this and everything being so polarized, like even when I did a walk a couple days ago, and I'm like, I wonder what that person thinks about it. I wonder what that person looked at me weird. I bet you they're happy about this. But it's not true, right? But we fall into these traps, especially when you get stuck in the social media hole. That's just not true. So I think it's helpful to practice the fact that most people are good. Most people can have a conversation. But the fact is he did something that most of us don't do, and that's have in-person conversations. Most of us just hide behind social media, I think. And I don't know.
I'll add to your social media point. And I know that I've been guilty of this in the past. I wouldn't say so much recently because I've learned to just shut my mouth on social media for the most part. I post things for my, about my wife and kids, for my friends and family, and that's about where I leave it. I will consume content, but I will not comment on content for that very reason. And I found that, myself included, you turn into a keyboard warrior when you're looking at a screen. Whether you're on the computer, on your tablet, on your phone, you will say things that may be more extreme or more rude or more crass than you ever would to somebody face to face. And so that person that you're like, I wonder what they think about it. They may say one thing to your face and something totally different behind a keyboard because they're anonymous or will never meet. And social media can bring us together and give us breaking news like that, to where we see things that we didn't think we were going to see really quick, and bring us together. And there's good in that. But there's also that flip side where I think we're devolving into with social media, and society as a whole is going to have to make a decision on, will we continue to hide behind this, or, will we look at this and go, maybe we should clean this up a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like kind of common knowledge that social media is really like a cancer. I mean, it doesn't have a lot of redeeming values anymore. Like breaking news, we're all aware in seconds of breaking news. We can all watch the video within seconds of it happening. But the vast majority of it's just filth and not helpful. It's an easy dopamine dump. I've been addicted to TikTok for like a month, and that's why I had to delete it off my phone again. But it's so easy to like just jump on there and scroll. What else am I going to do while I'm taking a shit? Yeah. Read a book, I guess.
Read the back of a shampoo bottle. I think that's what they used to do.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a much better activity than scrolling social media. I just feel like it's just a cancer on society. And I feel like, I hope by the time my kids are in high school, this stuff is changed, because I can't imagine what it's going to be in 10 years. The evergreen kid, they say, was radicalized online. So it's not even social media. It's some of these chat services that they get into, and they're looking for someone to sympathize with their, thoughts or whatever it is. And, it's just the mental health of our teenagers is abysmal.
Yeah, I think for me, kind of what you're building off of what you're talking about, Charlie excelled at that person-to-person interaction of having civil discourse with people who are very different than him. And I mean, obviously you would get the crazy ones, and those are the ones that would always end up on social media, where it's like you have a dude in like a goat head mask or whatever coming up there and just chanting at him, or people coming up with shirts that just say F Charlie Kirk or whatever it is. But the ones who actually wanted to hear what he had to say, he was an expert at giving a reason, as we're called in the Bible. Like, right, we have to be able to give a reason for what we believe. And as you guys have said, like, he was so well read, but he was just as well read politically and religiously. He knew the Bible front to back. I mean, he'd be pulling Bible verses out like this, saying like this, well, this is why I believe the way I believe. And it's just, regardless of what you like, your take on him or your view, whether you agree with him or not, it's still just he's doing what he sees to try and make the country a better place. Mm-hmm. And I think we can learn a lot from him to put the phones away, get off social media, and have that person-to-person interaction, to where we can build relationships with people that on social media we may hate. But social media is designed to breed hate.
That's right.
I mean, because like you said, like depending on what your algorithm is, you're going to see one side of it, and it's going to pitch you against the other side.
It will feed that beast.
Right. And so it's so important to kind of, in a sense, pick up where he left off. Yeah. And I know there's a lot of people that will look to do that. But that's, I mean, even in our own personal lives, in our own personal spheres of influence, just to be able to be like, you know what, like, if I could be a quarter of the communicator that Charlie Kirk was, then I can have an influence in those that I come into contact with on a daily basis, or even just come into contact every once in a while. Because it all starts with planting that seed. And that's what Charlie did. And you can look at, there's so many stories of where he planted that seed and then it would just grow. Right. And so we're not responsible to change people's minds. We're just responsible to plant that seed. And then we pray it gets watered. Yeah. And so I think there's just so much to take from it. And I think that is why it affected all of us, is because beyond all of the other stuff we touched on, like, we've all listened to certain parts of certain things that he has said, and it's all touched us in a different way. Whether it be on the political side, or whether it just be me, it was mostly just the spiritual side of it, and just listening to him and seeing the way he was so good at loving his wife and kids, and the way he would talk about how, well, he takes a Sabbath from the phone. You can't get a hold of me from this time to this time because this is just for my family. I have to get away from this. I have to spend time with my family. And it was evident. I mean, so many videos of his daughter running to him or whatever, just interactions with him and his kids. And I'm just like, and it breaks my heart because those kids will never have that again with him, but they had it. Yeah. And goes back to kind of what you were saying, David. Like, we don't know how long we're going to be on earth, but we have to make every day count. Even when we're tired, even when we're exhausted, when we're getting home from work, just mentally not there. Like, and we just want to tell the kids, just go entertain yourself. I just need to chill. Like, I found myself this last week, like, reminding myself, even if I say that at first, then I get up and I'm like, no, I'm going to go do this, because I want to leave that same impression on my kids. If I die before my kids grow up, I want my kids to remember these moments. And I want to be not only the example of a good father, but a godly man to my children. And I want them to be able to look back and be like, no, I know where I stand in my walk with God because my dad taught me. My dad not only raised me, but he was an example of what I need to be. And I think that's what, as I've sat on it for the past week now, I think that's where I've come to, is just like, it's not easy, but it's not supposed to be easy. But we have to try, and we have to. We can talk about making the most of each day, but when you're faced with a tragedy such as this, then it really becomes real to you, and it really is like, man, I need to go tell my wife how much I love her. I need to go tell my kids, like, I love you guys more than you can even imagine. Like, and they'll get sick of hearing it. But you know what? I don't care, because I want them to know. I want them to know how much I love them, how much I care for them. And I want Leondi to know, like, she's my partner for life. Like, I don't, like, and that's just, I hope I can hold on to that. That's where I go from here, is like, I hope this isn't just something where it's like, well, I'm going to feel this way for the next month, and then it's just going to slowly fade away. Like, no, I have to be intentional about making sure this lasts, and making sure that I stay oriented on them going forward and being the example that I need to be.
Something that was interesting with Charlie Kirk is, so much of his fame came from viral clips and videos. he was not on social media.
Mhm.
Obviously all of his platforms had it, and that's where, so much of us knew him from, but he was not on social media. So it was up to his team and his wife to tell him when things went viral or what he was being talked about. So, certainly a piece to encourage, limiting that social media piece. But I'll ask our Charlie, since you said that you kind of, have consumed probably the most content of his over the last year. Cause I'll be honest, I would see his stuff from time to time, but I didn't really pick up on it till about the election when, he spoke at the convention, and, on election night, it was his coverage that I watched, cause he was doing the live podcast and really had the inside of the team and Trump's ear and all that. So, I did pick up on that, but I will say of what I've consumed over the last, Trump's been in office for 7 months. So we'll call it 7-8 months that I've watched, is 90% of the time he was the most composed civil orator that could have that civil discourse respectfully than anybody else that I've seen online. But he was also human. There's about 10% of the time where he was off the plane in a red eye, lost his temper, said something that he knew he probably regretted, or just yelled at somebody. Listen, we're all human. We're all going to do that. So,
Right.
So to say, well, there was that one time. I'm an imperfect father. I've lost my temper plenty of times. Is it fair to say that, 90% of the time he was that civil, chill, respectful guy and just...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd honestly say it's probably more than that.
Okay.
Yeah. And he even talked about it. He's been able to kind of hone his craft over the years. He's been doing it since he was 18. He's 31. So, obviously earlier on he would get more upset and be more like, I have to prove something. But he talked often about how he would meet people where they come to the mic. If they come there and they just want to belittle him, call him names, and he'll meet that. He may not be as poised and he may be more direct, but if there was people who were honestly asking questions, honestly wanted to know his opinion, absolutely. He would give them such direct and confident answers, things that they could go research on their own. And yeah, I would say he's one of the most respectful people out there, and you'll see these videos out there that obviously clip it to just get reactions. There's one that drives me crazy where it's him saying that he's calling some Asian woman a slur, and when you actually see the video, he's talking to somebody named Cenk.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
I
like,
saw that.
Man,
Yeah.
they're just taking anything they possibly can just to try to... Anyway, I know you said you didn't want to get into politics, but I find it irritating, to say the least.
Well, I think it's interesting that if the guy had skeletons in his closet, we would probably know about him by now. I mean, his life was so public for the last decade. Like if he was beating his wife or, getting high on cocaine every weekend, we would know about it by now. I mean, most great men in history, I won't name the ones I know specifically about because that sounds controversial, but they were womanizers or cokeheads, and they did a lot of really good things for the country. But they also did this. And with Charlie Kirk, you don't really see a lot of it. Maybe he lost his composure from time to time, but there were guy wasn't a womanizer, wasn't cheating on his wife. He wasn't, doing it. I feel like we would know about it, right? If there was some aspect of him that was really bad because of what he stood for. And most great men, there's something like that, even the qualities you respect them for, there's this other aspect of their life that you really disrespect them for. And I haven't really seen anything like that come up with him, which I think is interesting and maybe why it is so heavy, because he was a good man.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot you can point to short of taking his quotes out of context that you can point to.
I think one of the most interesting things that I've seen is the high profile folks who didn't agree with him, whether it be on his politics or his religion. Bill Maher's, Gavin Newsom's, anybody from the left, because he was on the right. There was so much praise and respect for him, which is just not something you see. If you look at a Trump or a Biden or Obama and insert any right-wing person there, there's always bickering. Well, he did this or he said that. Like, you just didn't hear that with him. And, I think part of that heaviness is the world just lost a genuinely good person, which hurts.
I think going back to why it hurts so much and why we see people celebrating his death, it's like we see ourselves in Charlie. Like, we're never going to be Charlie, right? But like Aaron started off the podcast saying, is we're in our 30s, 40s, young kids, young family, Christians, conservatives, and they're celebrating his death. That means they're going to celebrate our death should it happen. And that's why it hurts so bad.
Mm-hmm.
He embodied what we aspire to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's, two responses you can have to this as a Christian, and it's like, well, do I clam up? Do we shut down the dad pod? I don't want people to know my opinions. Like, even our very tiny, just our wife, sphere of influence of this podcast.
A couple father-in-laws.
Like, is Kim going to be coming at me because of something I said about porn? Like, anytime you put your opinion out there, no matter how small your influence, you're asking for criticism. And it's like, now you're asking for a bullet. Like, I didn't know that was on the table.
Right.
Like, and so I think, your response is to, well, I'm just going to clam up. I'm not going to talk to anybody about Christianity. I'm going to keep my beliefs inside of me. And the other response is like, well, maybe I should be talking about this more. And that's kind of why I want to have you guys over too, because I'm like, this isn't a time where I'm going to choose to be quiet, no matter how humble my opinion is, and how uncontroversial I feel my opinion is. I think we need to have conversation, and we need to talk, and you need to share the truth.
Yeah. I think the biggest takeaway is to do it from a place of love and with respect.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't guarantee that there won't be consequences to that. But to your point, I think if you're going face to face, because unfortunately the person who did take his life was not face to face with him. 200 yards away, just didn't like what he saw online. But I think for the everyday person like us, a face-to-face respectful conversation where you're coming from a place of love to understand why somebody's thought process and background is, what they're bringing to the table because of their thought process or background. That will do a lot more to have a civil, respectful conversation that won't lead to violence or necessarily mean words.
Yeah, go back to what I was saying earlier. Like, most people are good and genuine and willing to have a conversation, no matter how opposite your opinions are. Like, when I used to work on the ambulance, you'd be forced into it because you'd be forced to work 12 hours with a partner that you guys believe completely differently, and you're bored out of your mind for half the day, so you just start talking about stuff anyway. And like, I remember countless partners I had where we disagreed on stuff, but we could talk about it civilly for hours because we were forced into that scenario. Most people aren't forced into that scenario, so I think it's so easy to assume that just because you disagree with someone means you can't have a civil conversation, and that's just not true. Yeah. You can have a civil conversation with everybody, without throwing personal attacks, and find some common ground. I was able to find common ground with people I totally disagreed with a lot of everything on, but there was still some common ground in there. And I think that when civil conversation goes away, we're in a really bad situation. Because violence is not the answer. That shuts down conversation. It says, I don't care what you think,
Yeah, it's like the opposite of curiosity. I think that, talking about having influence on other people, inviting conversation, even going back to the social media thing. Like, I think that one of the reasons that social media is so dangerous is like the confirmation bias, where it's like you feel like, that you have tribalism and this side believes that and I believe this, and you focus on what separates you rather than what makes you, or what you have in common. But I think, like, you're with your partner in the ambulance sitting there for 12 hours, you probably get bored, which is another thing that social media does that's damaging, is it doesn't allow us to be bored. But then your curiosity gets the best of you, and then you start asking questions. And I think that's what Charlie always did is, he would set down the microphone and let the other person talk. And then he would usually answer with questions like, oh, okay, like, tell me more about this, or what do you mean by this, or what's your definition of this? And I don't do that. I don't see people doing that, especially when already feel like they know where it's going. You know, you want to be the first one to jump in and give your opinion or give your thoughts rather than asking questions. And it's like, if I were to, you know, think about people who I know disagree with me and challenge myself to have that conversation, challenge myself to take them out to coffee or whatever, you know, if I think about, okay, what are the things that I genuinely am curious about? What are the things about this person that I really, truly want to know? And that, I mean, and there have been times where I've, you know, like, okay, let me ask this question and see where it goes. And then to your point, you recognize, oh, we actually have a lot in common. It starts to break down some of those barriers. And you start to, find some common ground. But I think that's another, you know, tying those 2 points together. Social media bad because it doesn't allow you to be curious. It forces you to focus on what separates you. And then Charlie good because he was naturally curious. He focused on the things that we had in common, and he create, to everyone's point, face-to-face conversations versus the keyboard warrior.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know where those two paths go. It's like, one, it goes to uniting people and bringing people together, and the other one goes towards violence. You know?
And you don't even have to agree. You don't have to come to some compromise or agreement every time. Right. It's like, you know, most of me and my partners didn't change our minds at all, but it was so nice to have that conversation and then you pull up on a call and we're like, all right, let's go save this person's life. And then you come back and you're like, I can't believe you believe this. And, you know, but like, you know, you don't even have to change each other's minds. If there's a way to have a conversation, we can at least agree on how to govern society and how to live in peace with each other.
Yeah.
We don't have to agree on every fine point. You're not going to convince people with your arguments. Most people can't be swayed at all. Yeah. You know, most people are very stuck in their opinions, and that's fine, but we have to have the ability to discuss them peacefully.
I can't tell you the last time I've heard somebody say, let's agree to disagree on this.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody always has to have that I got you moment. So, you know, I kind of feel like what, you know, we're all coming to the conclusion and agreement on in general is we need to stop looking for the gotcha moment because you feel like you know where it's going and you got to be the first person in there. And really you need to ask more questions to understand better. I think that would do a world of good for society and for individual relationships, because you can be friends with somebody that has different thoughts and opinions on
and you should be.
Yeah.
And we probably have, I mean, we could probably debate different theological concepts that we would all disagree on. I mean, it's not like you have to agree on every detail to live peacefully with each other. You know, I mean, I'm sure there's things in the Bible that we all interpret a little bit differently. There's a lot of weird stuff in there, but it doesn't change the fact that we can have a peaceful conversation.
I've heard multiple pastors of our church all say, if all your friends look like you, talk like you, think like you, you don't have enough friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I feel like that kind of goes back to the whole civil discourse. Because if you're having civil discourse properly, you're not waiting for that gotcha moment. You're not there to prove a point. You're there to have a conversation and ask questions and then give your take on it. And I think part of it too, because we talked a little bit about, like, you don't ever hear anything coming out with Charlie, but like Charlie never claimed to be perfect, right? Like Charlie, one of the first things he would say, which we would all agree, we're all obviously in the same boat, but like, I'm a terrible human being. Like, I have sinned and I am no better than you. The only difference is I've accepted this free gift of salvation. And I think it's so important to realize that too. I mean, you can go back and you can read through scriptures and, I mean, look at Paul. I mean, the Apostle Paul killed believers before he was converted. But then once he saw that truth, that's what changed him. And as he grew in his faith, he realized he gained more and more understanding of his own depravity and of his own sinful nature. And so I think it's important to realize, like, we've said it here, like it's been thrown around a few places, but like talking about Charlie is a modern day martyr. But the important thing to remember is, like, he didn't ask for that title. It's only because of how he lived his life, and he recognized his own depravity and recognized as a Christian, like, there's only one answer. And we're given the Bible as that answer. And I don't know how many of the clips that I've seen, especially this last week or so, because there's just been everywhere, where it does talk about that, where he just talks about, he's like, look, I'm a sinner. I don't deserve eternal life, but in God's mercy, he's granted it to me because he is gracious to us. And so it's refreshing too, to know, like, we don't have that standard. Like, we don't have to try to be perfect. We just have to obviously do the best we can. And as we grow in our walk with Christ, our lives will reflect that, but we will never attain perfection, at least not in this life.
Right.
And so it does take a weight off of our shoulders, especially as men and as like leaders of our households, to know, like, I'm going to screw up. There's only been one person on this earth that never screwed up. And because of him, I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to get every little detail right, because he did it for me. And then he took my punishment for me, so that way I don't have to. And I think that's the kind of the place he came from, and that's why he was able to have that conversation with people, because he wasn't coming from a moral superiority aspect. He wasn't looking down on people. He was recognizing we're all humans. We've all sinned. We all fall short, but let's have a conversation. Tell me about you. Tell me about what makes you tick. Tell me about your beliefs. And then he was bold in proclaiming what he believed.
Yeah.
He was so disciplined too, which is the most inspiring part. Is I feel like if we were to have face-to-face conversation with people, I wouldn't be able to defend most of my points because I'm not good with words. And to see Charlie Kirk just like know everything, you know, it's like, man, that guy just read nonstop, read the Bible. He was in the Bible daily, you know, reading books daily. He just knew his stuff. And that's like, he had the discipline to know what he needs to do it, and then really live it out. And so some of the most inspiring stuff is like, man, he can do it. Sure, let's try it for me, you know? Yeah. Let's go read some books. Let's study. Let's figure out why we believe what we believe, because it's so easy to be like, oh yeah, what he said, you know? Yeah. And it's, I don't know, I'm inspired because of that, to really understand myself more, understand why I believe what I believe, and just thanks to Charlie Kirk, honestly. Just yeah,
it's good. It's a good note to close on, eh?
Yeah. Let's wrap this one.